The morning air on Centauri Prime carried the usual scent of crystalline flowers and processed atmosphere as thousands of young beings made their way to the Galactic Education Complex. Among them walked Marcus Chen, a human exchange student who had arrived just 3 months ago from a planet the galactic databases simply listed as Terra, classification pending. Marcus adjusted his universal translator and tried not to stare at his classmates. The Centauri students moved with fluid grace, their translucent blue skin shimmering in the artificial sunlight. Nearby, a group of Corvan youth clicked and whistled in their native tongue, their 6 arms gesticulating wildly as they discussed the upcoming Galactic Aptitude Assessment. The insectoid Thrix students moved in perfect formation, their compound eyes reflecting the morning light like tiny mirrors. "Hey, Marcus," called out Zara, a friendly Centauri student who had become something of a guide during his first weeks. Her voice carried the melodic quality typical of her species. "Ready for the big test today?" "Ready. Ready." Marcus shrugged, a gesture that always seemed to confuse his alien classmates. "I guess so. Back home, we just called them final exams. How different can it be?" Zara's expression shifted to something Marcus had learned indicated concern among her people. "You do understand this isn't just any test, right? The Galactic Aptitude Assessment determines your entire future. Your career path, your social standing, even your mating prospects, are all decided by today's results." "No pressure then," Marcus muttered, though the weight of her words did make his stomach tighten slightly. As they entered the massive testing facility, Marcus couldn't help but marvel at the architecture. The building seemed to defy physics, with floating platforms and walls that shifted color based on the emotional states of those nearby. Right now, the walls showed a nervous yellow-green, as thousands of students filed in for the most important day of their academic lives. The testing chamber was enormous, easily the size of several football stadiums back on Earth. Students were arranged by species, with each group having specialized equipment designed for their particular physiology. Marcus found himself in a section marked Unclassified Species, Standard Protocol, along with a few other beings whose homeworlds were apparently still being evaluated by the Galactic Council. Administrator Vex Tar, a imposing Corvan with elaborate cybernetic implants, stepped forward to address the assembled students. His voice boomed through the chamber's advanced acoustic system. "Students of the Galactic Education Complex, today you face the assessment that will determine your place in civilized society. This test has been refined over millennia to accurately measure the capabilities and potential of every known species in the galaxy." Marcus noticed how the administrator's 4 eyes seemed to linger on the unclassified section, with what he could only interpret as mild disdain. The assessment consists of 3 phases: physical capability evaluation, mental aptitude testing, and crisis simulation. Each phase is carefully calibrated to challenge you at the very limits of your species' known abilities. A Thrix student near the front raised one of her 4 arms. "Administrator Vextar, what happens if someone exceeds the expected parameters for their species?" The administrator's mandibles clicked in. What Marcus had learned was the Corvan equivalent of laughter. "An amusing question, young Thrix. The parameters are based on extensive study of every species in the galaxy. They represent the absolute maximum potential. Exceeding them would be, theoretically, impossible." Marcus felt a strange chill run down his spine, though he couldn't say why. The first phase began immediately. Students were led to individual testing pods designed to evaluate their physical capabilities. Marcus's pod was a generic model, built to accommodate a variety of unknown species. The walls were lined with sensors, and robotic arms emerged to attach monitoring equipment to his body. "Beginning baseline measurements," announced the pod's artificial intelligence in a pleasant, gender-neutral voice. "Please remain still while we calibrate for your species." Marcus stood motionless as scanners ran up and down his body. He could hear similar procedures happening in neighboring pods, though the sounds varied dramatically based on the species being tested. The Centauri pods hummed with harmonic frequencies, while the Thrix sections buzzed with electronic chatter. Calibration complete, his pod announced. Species classification: unknown carbon-based bipedal. Estimated gravity origin: 0.8 to 1.2 standard units. Beginning physical capability. Evaluation. The floor beneath Marcus began to move, transforming into a treadmill. Please begin running at a comfortable pace, the AI instructed. Marcus started with a light jog, the kind of pace he might use for a morning run back home. Through the transparent walls of his pod, he could see other students beginning their own tests. The Zentari students moved with elegant efficiency, their forms perfectly optimized for their low-gravity homeworld. The Corvan youth were impressively strong but moved with deliberate slowness, each step calculated and precise. Please increase pace, the AI requested after several minutes. Marcus shifted to a faster run, still well within his comfort zone. He had been on his high school track team and was in decent shape, though nothing extraordinary by human standards. Increase pace, the AI requested again, and Marcus could detect a hint of confusion in its synthesized voice. He moved into a sprint, the kind of speed he might use in a 400-meter dash. The monitoring equipment was beeping more frequently now, and he noticed technicians gathering outside his pod, their faces showing various expressions of interest. Subject is now operating at 250% of projected maximum capability for estimated species parameters, the AI announced. Increase pace. Marcus was starting to breathe harder, but he pushed himself to his actual maximum speed. Around him, other students were beginning to slow down, their tests apparently complete, but his pod kept demanding more. Subject now at 340% of projected maximum. This exceeds safety protocols. Please slow down. Arc. But Marcus had found his rhythm now, and something stubborn in his nature rebelled against stopping. He maintained his pace for another 5 minutes before finally slowing to a stop, barely winded despite the AI's increasingly frantic announcements about safety protocols. Dr. Yelaneth, the facility's chief xenobiologist, was among the technicians now crowding around his pod. Her Zentari features showed deep concern as she reviewed the readouts on her tablet. Run the cardiovascular stress test, she ordered the AI. Doctor, the subject has already exceeded all safety parameters for unknown species. Further testing could be dangerous. Override safety protocols. I want to see what this being is really capable of. The next series of tests pushed Marcus harder than any workout he'd ever experienced. Strength assessments had him lifting weights that should have been impossible for a creature his size. Endurance trials that were designed to exhaust subjects within minutes stretched on for over an hour as Marcus continued to perform at levels the system couldn't comprehend. In the neighboring pods, his classmates watched in growing amazement. Zara pressed her hands against the transparent wall of his pod. Her bioluminescent patches flashing in patterns Marcus had learned indicated extreme surprise. The most shocking moment came during the reaction time test. A complex holographic environment materialized around Marcus, filled with obstacles designed to challenge the reflexes of various species. What should have been a careful navigation became something resembling a dance, as Marcus moved through the course with fluid precision, dodging projectiles and obstacles that were supposedly moving too fast for most beings to even see clearly. This is impossible, Dr. Yelaneth whispered, staring at her readings. His reaction times are faster than Thrix combat specialists. His endurance exceeds that of Corvan heavy workers. His adaptability ratings are off the charts. Administrator Vextar had been summoned, and now stood with his arms crossed, all 4 eyes fixed on Marcus's pod. There must be an error in the calibration. No species develops such capabilities without specific evolutionary pressures. Sir, Dr. Yelaneth said quietly, I've run the calibration 17 times. The readings are accurate. This human is operating at levels we've never recorded. Human? Vextar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. I thought their planet was listed as Class 7. Garden World. Geverny. Garden World. Dr. Yelaneth pulled up the classification on her tablet. Actually, sir, the survey is still pending. The initial probe data was incomplete. What is aside was not now. As the physical testing concluded, Marcus emerged from his pod to find himself the center of attention. Hundreds of students and dozens of faculty members were staring at him with expressions ranging from awe to concern to outright fear. "Hey," he said to Zara, who was still pressed against her pod wall. Zara's bioluminescent patches flickered in what Marcus now recognized as nervous laughter. "Marcus," she said slowly, "you just broke every physical performance record in the history of the Galactic Assessment." "Oh," Marcus replied, not sure how to respond to that. "Is that good?" Administrator Vex Tar stepped forward, his imposing form casting a shadow over the human student. "Young human, before we proceed to the mental aptitude phase, I must ask, what is your homeworld really like?" Marcus scratched his head, another gesture that seemed to fascinate the watching aliens. "Earth? It's pretty nice, I guess. We've got mountains and oceans, different climates. The gravity's a bit heavy, but you get used to it." "Why? Heavy gravity?" Dr. Ylaneth interjected. "How heavy? Standard Earth gravity? About 9.8 meters per second squared. Normal stuff." The doctor's hands flew over her tablet, and Marcus watched her face go pale. "Administrator," she whispered, "if my calculations are correct, this human's homeworld has nearly twice the gravity of any inhabited planet we've discovered." A murmur ran through the crowd of watching students. Marcus heard the word Deathworld being whispered in several different languages, though his translator seemed to have trouble with the concept. "What's a Deathworld?" he asked innocently. Administrator Vextar's mandibles clicked slowly, thoughtfully. "Young human," he said carefully. "A Deathworld is a planet so hostile to life that we believed no sentient species could evolve there. They're theoretical curiosities, nothing more." "Oh," Marcus said. "Well, Earth's not that bad, once you get used to the earthquakes and hurricanes and stuff. The wildlife can be a bit aggressive, but that's what makes camping fun." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus looked around at the faces, staring at him, and began to realize that maybe his homeworld was more unique than he'd thought. "Doctor," Ylaneth broke the silence with a trembling voice, "we need to contact the Galactic Council immediately. If there's an entire species of these Deathworlders, we may need to completely revise our understanding of biological limitations." As technicians scrambled to send urgent communications across the galaxy, Marcus couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed by all the attention. He'd just been trying to do his best on the test. He had no idea that his best was about to turn the galactic community's understanding of life itself completely upside down. The mental aptitude phase was about to begin. And if Marcus's physical performance was any indication, the day was far from over. The mental aptitude testing facility had been hastily reconfigured in the 30 minutes following Marcus's physical performance. What had started as a routine assessment had become the most closely monitored test in galactic education complex history. Representatives from 3 different scientific institutions were now present. Their recording equipment trained on the human student who seemed completely oblivious to the chaos he had caused. Marcus sat in a specialized neural interface chair, dozens of sensor pads attached to his skull. The machine hummed quietly as it calibrated to his unique brain structure, a process that was taking significantly longer than usual. "Fascinating," murmured Dr. Kethwin, a renowned Zentari neuroscientist who had arrived via emergency transport. "The neural density is extraordinary. Look at these readings. His brain is processing information on multiple parallel tracks simultaneously." Administrator Vextar stood behind the growing crowd of researchers, his 4 eyes focused intently on the displays, showing Marcus's brain activity. "Dr. Kethwin, in your expert opinion, what are we looking at here?" The neuroscientist's bioluminescent patches pulsed in complex patterns as she considered the question. "Administrator, I believe we're witnessing the cognitive architecture of a species that evolved under extreme survival pressure. Every pathway is optimized for rapid decision-making and pattern recognition. It's beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Marcus, unaware of the scientific discussion happening around him, was growing impatient with the calibration process. How much longer is this going to take? He asked. The physical stuff was pretty straightforward. Just a few more moments, Doctor, Kethwin assured him, though her voice carried an undertone of excitement. Your neural architecture is quite unique. We want to ensure the test parameters are appropriate. What the scientists didn't tell Marcus was that they had already recalibrated the test 3 times, each time increasing the difficulty beyond what any known species had ever faced. The original settings, designed to challenge the most intelligent beings in the galaxy, would likely have bored the human to sleep based on his brain's apparent processing power. Calibration complete, the AI finally announced. Beginning mental aptitude assessment at level 15 difficulty. Dr. Kethwin's eyes widened. Level 15 was typically reserved for ancient artificial intelligences or the most brilliant minds among the galactic scientific community. No student had ever been tested at that level. AI, are you certain about that difficulty setting? She asked. Affirmative. Subject's neural activity suggests standard testing protocols would be insufficient to properly evaluate cognitive capabilities. The first test began with a 3-dimensional maze that materialized in the holographic space around Marcus. Unlike the simple navigation puzzles typically given to students, this maze shifted and changed constantly, with sections rotating, passages appearing and disappearing, and gravity fields that could be manipulated to reach otherwise inaccessible areas. Marcus studied the maze for exactly 12 seconds before beginning to move. Remarkable. Doctor, Kethwin whispered, watching his neural patterns on her displays. He's not just solving the maze, he's predicting its changes and planning 17 moves ahead. What should have taken even a genius-level student 45 minutes to complete, Marcus finished in 6 minutes and 37 seconds. But more impressive than his speed was his approach. He had found optimizations in the maze that the designers never intended, exploiting quirks in the physics engine that even the AI hadn't anticipated. How did you know to use the momentum from that gravity well to reach the upper level? Dr. Kethwin asked, as the maze dissolved around him. Marcus shrugged. It just made sense. You could see how the gravitational fields interacted if you watched the particle streams. Plus, the maze had a rhythm to its changes. Once you figured out the pattern, you could time your movements perfectly. The assembled scientists exchanged glances. Particle stream analysis and gravitational field mathematics were graduate-level concepts. For Marcus, they were apparently intuitive. The next test involved multidimensional logic puzzles that required understanding of mathematics most species didn't encounter until advanced university studies. Marcus approached them like Sudoku puzzles, casually filling in answers that required complex calculations most beings needed computers to perform. Dr. Kethwin, Administrator, Vextar said quietly. What exactly are we witnessing here? If I didn't know better, she replied, her voice filled with wonder. I'd say we're watching the cognitive performance of a species that evolved as persistence hunters on a world where failure to think quickly meant death. The pattern recognition test was where Marcus truly began to excel. The AI presented him with sequences of symbols, energy patterns, and abstract concepts that would challenge the pattern-matching abilities of even the most advanced civilizations. Marcus didn't just identify the patterns. He found patterns within patterns, connections that crossed multiple dimensional frameworks, and relationships that the test designers hadn't even realized they'd included. This is impossible, muttered Dr. Veltesh, a Korvan mathematician who specialized in complex systems analysis. He's identifying pattern recursions that exist on 17 different conceptual levels simultaneously. What does that mean? Asked one of the younger technicians. It means, Dr. Veltesh said slowly, that this human's brain is processing information in ways we didn't think biological minds could achieve. The creativity and problem-solving section revealed yet another aspect of human cognitive ability that stunned the researchers. When presented with engineering challenges, Marcus didn't just find solutions. He found elegant, efficient solutions that often used principles the galactic scientific community hadn't discovered yet. One test presented him with a theoretical problem: how to establish a sustainable colony on a planet with extreme temperature variations, toxic atmosphere, and unstable geology. The AI expected him to select from a list of standard terraforming approaches used throughout the galaxy. Instead, Marcus spent 10 minutes designing an entirely new type of adaptive habitat that could adjust to changing conditions in real time, using a combination of biomimetic materials and distributed intelligence networks. His design was so innovative that Dr. Kethwin immediately flagged it for review by the Galactic Engineering Council. "Where did you learn about adaptive materials engineering?" she asked. "I didn't, really," Marcus replied. "But I've watched how plants and animals back home deal with changing environments. Nature's really good at building things that can adapt and survive. I just applied those principles to engineering problems." This casual biomimicry, treating millions of years of evolutionary optimization as a starting point for innovation, represented a completely different approach to problem-solving than anything in galactic civilization. The final mental test was designed to evaluate strategic thinking and leadership potential. Students were presented with complex scenarios involving resource management, diplomatic negotiations, and crisis response. The AI would present a situation and then analyze how the subject's proposed solutions would play out. The scenario given to Marcus was particularly challenging. A multi-species colony ship had suffered critical damage and was stranded in space between star systems. Resources were limited, tensions between species were rising, and multiple systems were failing. Traditional solutions involved choosing which problems to solve first, essentially deciding which species or systems to sacrifice for the greater good. Marcus stared at the scenario for several long moments, his brain activity showing intense processing across multiple regions. Then, he began proposing solutions that the AI had never seen before. Instead of choosing between problems, he designed cascading solutions, where fixing one issue created resources or opportunities to address others. He proposed using the different abilities and perspectives of each species, not as complications to manage, but as assets to leverage. His approach turned the crisis scenario into a collaborative optimization problem, where every species contributed their unique strengths. "The AI is having trouble modeling his solutions," reported one of the technicians monitoring the system. "His approach is so far outside normal parameters that the simulation engine keeps returning anomalous results." "What kind of anomalous results?" Administrator Vextar asked. "Well, sir, according to the simulation, his approach doesn't just save the colony ship. It makes it more efficient and capable than it was before the crisis began." Dr. Kethwin looked up from her neural monitoring displays with an expression of pure amazement. "Administrator, I need to share something with you. This human's problem-solving approach appears to be based on what I can only describe as controlled chaos optimization. Instead of seeking stability and predictability, like every known species, he actually thrives on uncertainty and uses it as a tool." "What does that mean for the assessment?" Vextar asked. "It means," Dr. Kethwin said quietly, "that we may need to create an entirely new category of cognitive evaluation. This human doesn't just score above our scales. He breaks our fundamental assumptions about how intelligence works." As the mental aptitude testing concluded, word had already spread throughout the educational complex. Students from every species pressed against the observation windows, trying to catch a glimpse of the human who was rewriting the standards for biological capability. Marcus, unaware of the fervor he had created, simply asked, "So how did I do? When do we get to the crisis simulation part?" Administrator Vextar exchanged a look with Dr. Kethwin. The crisis simulation had been designed as the ultimate test. Scenarios so challenging and dangerous that they pushed students to their absolute limits. Based on what they'd seen so far, these Cannerbring on Herman, they were beginning to worry that their most extreme scenarios might not be extreme enough for a creature from a death world. Marcus, Doctor, Kethwin said carefully. Before we proceed to the final phase, we need to ask you something important. What do you consider a dangerous or challenging situation on your homeworld? Marcus thought for a moment. Well, there's the obvious stuff like natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions. Weather can get pretty extreme with hurricanes and tornadoes. Then you've got the wildlife. Bears, big cats, venomous snakes, sharks. Oh, and avalanches if you're in the mountains, flash floods in the desert, sudden storms at sea. He paused, noticing the increasingly horrified expressions around him. But that's just normal stuff everyone deals with, he added quickly. It's not like we live in constant fear or anything. You just learn to be prepared and adaptable. Why do you ask? The silence that followed was profound. Dr. Kethwin realized that what Marcus described as normal stuff everyone deals with represented threats that would cause mass evacuations on most civilized worlds. Marcus, Administrator Vex's Tar said slowly, I think we may need to recalibrate our understanding of what constitutes a crisis simulation for your species. As technicians scrambled to modify the final testing phase, news of the humans' performance was already racing across galactic communication networks. On distant worlds, xenobiologists and military strategists were beginning to ask the same question. If one human could perform like this, what was humanity as a whole capable of? The crisis simulation was about to begin, and no one, not even Marcus, had any idea what they were about to discover about the true potential of a species forged in the fires of a death world. The crisis simulation chamber had been completely rebuilt in the 2 hours following Marcus's mental aptitude results. What began as standard testing equipment had been transformed into the most sophisticated survival scenario generator in known space. Emergency consultation calls with military simulation experts, survival training specialists, and even a few retired galactic peacekeepers had resulted in a testing environment that pushed beyond anything previously considered safe for educational purposes. Marcus stood in the center of the chamber, now wearing a full environmental suit equipped with enough sensors to monitor every aspect of his physiology during the upcoming trials. Around him, nearly 100 researchers, military officials, and educational administrators watched through reinforced observation windows. The story of the human student who was breaking every assessment record had spread across multiple star systems, and some had traveled considerable distances just to witness the final phase. Marcus, Doctor, Kethwin's voice came through his suit's communication system. We need to explain what's about to happen. The crisis simulation is designed to test how beings respond under extreme stress. Typically, students face scenarios like equipment failures in safe environments or basic resource management challenges. She paused, consulting her notes. However, based on your previous performances and your descriptions of your homeworld, we've had to significantly modify the standard approach. Okay, Marcus replied, stretching his shoulders within the suit. Administrator Vex Tar stepped forward to the communication panel. Marcus, we've consulted with military survival experts across the galaxy to design scenarios that might actually challenge someone from your world. I must warn you, what you're about to experience would be considered lethal-level challenges for most species. Marcus's response surprised everyone. Oh, cool. So it'll actually be interesting then? The casual enthusiasm in his voice sent a ripple of concerned murmurs through the observation deck. Dr. Veltesh leaned over to Dr. Kethwin and whispered, Are we about to witness what military historians call human optimism? In the face of certain doom? I think, Dr. Kethwin replied quietly, we're about to find out exactly what that means. The chamber around Marcus began to shift and transform. Holographic projectors created a seamless virtual environment, while physical elements materialized from hidden compartments. Within moments, he found himself standing on what appeared to be a damaged spacecraft drifting through an asteroid field. Scenario 1. The AI announced. Catastrophic ship failure during asteroid field navigation. Multiple hull breaches. Life support failing. Navigation systems offline. Standard procedure would be to await rescue while conserving resources. Marcus immediately ignored standard procedure. While the simulation expected him to find a safe location and send distress signals, Marcus was already moving through the damaged vessel, quickly assessing the situation, with a thoroughness that amazed the observers. He didn't just catalog the damage, he began prioritizing repairs based on cascade effects, identifying which systems could be cannibalized to restore others, and developing a plan to not just survive, but to actively escape the dangerous situation. Look at his stress response. Doctor, Kethwin pointed out to the other observers. His heart rate has actually decreased since entering the scenario. He's become more focused, not more panicked. Marcus found the ship's maintenance bay and began constructing repair tools from spare parts, with an efficiency that suggested years of experience with jury-rigged solutions. When he discovered that the navigation computer was beyond repair, he didn't despair. He manually calculated a safe trajectory through the asteroid field, using only visual references and basic physics. "That's impossible," muttered Commander Thexval, a decorated Corvan military officer who had requested permission to observe. "He's performing trajectory calculations that require advanced computer assistance." "Commander," Dr. Kethwin said, "I think we're learning that impossible might not mean the same thing to a species from a death world." Marcus not only escaped the asteroid field, but managed to restore enough ship functionality to identify and rendezvous with a damaged cargo vessel that the simulation had included as background scenery. He had somehow recognized that the debris had patterns consistent with another ship in distress and had gone to investigate. "AI," Administrator Vextar called out. "Was the cargo vessel rescue scenario part of the programmed test?" "Negative, Administrator. The cargo vessel was included only as environmental background. The subject identified and chose to investigate it independently. The second scenario materialized around Marcus before he had time to rest. The chamber transformed into a hostile planet's surface with toxic atmosphere, extreme temperature fluctuations, and dangerous native wildlife. The standard test involved surviving for a simulated 24-hour period while awaiting extraction. Marcus assessed his environment with the same methodical approach he had used on the damaged spacecraft, but instead of simply finding shelter and waiting for rescue, he began actively adapting to the hostile world around him. Using materials from his emergency kit combined with native resources, he constructed not just a shelter, but a small base of operations. He identified which local plant life was safe to interact with, discovered a water source, and even figured out how to modify his equipment to better handle the atmospheric conditions. "He's not just surviving," observed Dr. Yilaneth, who had been monitoring his vital signs throughout the test. "He's actually thriving. Look at these readings. His stress hormones have normalized, and his cognitive function is operating at peak efficiency." But it was Marcus's interaction with the simulated hostile wildlife that truly demonstrated the difference between Deathworld evolution and standard galactic development. When a large predator discovered his camp, every other species would have either hidden or used their emergency beacon to signal for immediate extraction. Marcus studied the creature's behavior patterns, identified its territorial boundaries, and then calmly established a coexistence protocol. Within an hour, he had not only avoided becoming prey, but had actually formed a mutually beneficial relationship with what was supposed to be the scenario's primary threat. "How is he doing that?" asked one of the younger researchers. Commander Thexval answered grimly. "He's thinking like a predator while acting like a survivor. It's the most efficient possible approach to hostile environment adaptation." The third and final scenario was the one that made even the military advisors nervous. The chamber transformed into a multi-level crisis involving a space station under attack, civilian evacuations, system failures, and resource shortages, all happening simultaneously. It was designed to overwhelm decision-making capabilities through sheer complexity and time pressure. Marcus took one look at the chaos around him and smiled. "Now this," he said to himself, "feels like home." What followed was a display of crisis management that redefined the observer's understanding of leadership under pressure. Marcus didn't try to solve every problem. Instead, he identified which challenges could be turned into solutions for other challenges. He organized evacuation groups based on species abilities, turning what should have been a complicated logistics nightmare into an efficient collaborative effort. When the station's defense systems failed, Marcus didn't panic about the incoming attackers. Instead, he used the evacuation ship's communications arrays to coordinate a defensive formation that turned merchant vessels into an effective deterrent force. "He's treating this like a puzzle," Dr. Kethwin observed, "but a puzzle where he gets to change the rules as he goes." The most remarkable moment came when a critical system failure threatened to destroy the entire station. Standard protocol would have been to prioritize the evacuation and accept the loss of the facility. Marcus instead implemented what he called controlled cascade failure, deliberately triggering secondary failures in a specific sequence that actually stabilized the primary system. "That should not have worked," Dr. Veltesh said flatly. "The mathematics behind that approach violate three fundamental principles of engineering safety. Unless," Commander Thexval said slowly, "you evolved on a world where normal safety principles would get you killed, and only the most audacious solutions actually work." As the final scenario concluded, Marcus had not only saved the space station and all its inhabitants, but had improved its defensive capabilities and efficiency ratings. The AI was generating reports that made no sense to anyone reviewing them. "Assessment complete," the AI announced, though its voice carried an unusual uncertainty. "Warning. Subject performance exceeds all measurement parameters. Standard evaluation protocols are insufficient." Marcus removed his helmet and looked around at the silent observation deck. "So, how did I do? Did I pass?" The silence stretched for nearly a minute before Administrator Vextar found his voice. "Marcus," he said carefully, "you didn't just pass. You've forced us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about biological capabilities." Dr. Kethwin stepped forward with a tablet displaying his results. "Marcus, in standard scoring, the maximum possible score on the Galactic Aptitude Assessment is 1,000 points. The highest score ever recorded by any species was 847 points, achieved by a Zentari prodigy whose intellect was considered unmatched in galactic history." She paused, checking her tablet again as if she couldn't believe the numbers. "Your score is 2,847 points. The system had to create new mathematical frameworks just to calculate your results." "Is that good?" Marcus asked, genuinely uncertain. Commander Thexval stepped forward, his military bearing evident in every movement. "Young human. I've been involved in galactic defense for over 30 years. What you've demonstrated today represents capabilities that would revolutionize everything from military strategy to disaster response to deep space exploration. But more importantly, Dr. Kethwin added, you've shown us that our understanding of life's potential was fundamentally limited. If one human can perform at these levels, what does that mean for your species as a whole?" Marcus scratched his head, a gesture that had become endearing to his alien observers. "Well, I'm pretty average back home. I mean, I was decent at sports and okay at school, but nothing special. There are definitely people way smarter and stronger than me." The implications of his words hit the assembled scientists and officials like a physical blow. If Marcus was average by human standards, what would their best performers be capable of? Administrator Vextar was already composing urgent communications to the Galactic Council. "Marcus, I need to ask you something very important. How many humans are there?" "On Earth, about 8 billion, last I checked." "Why?" The number sent a wave of shocked whispers through the observation deck. 8 billion beings with capabilities that exceeded every known biological limit. Dr. Kethwin looked up from hurried calculations on her tablet. "Administrator, based on standard population dynamics and Marcus's self-assessment as average, we could be looking at a species with millions of individuals who would score above our previously maximum possible assessment. levels. And, Commander Thexval added grimly, if their world is as dangerous as Marcus describes, they would also be experienced in conflict resolution, crisis management, and survival scenarios that exceed our military training standards. Marcus, oblivious to the growing panic among the officials, simply asked, so, what happens now? Do I get to graduate or something? Administrator Vextar composed himself with visible effort. Marcus, I think graduation is the least of our concerns. We need to contact the Galactic Council immediately and arrange for a full diplomatic contact mission with your homeworld. Really? Marcus's face lit up with excitement. That's awesome. Everyone back home will be so excited to meet aliens. We've been wondering if anyone else was out here for ages. As the full implications of the day's discoveries began to sink in, the observers realized they had witnessed something unprecedented in galactic history. A species had been discovered that didn't just exceed known biological limits. They redefined what those limits could be. The human student, who had simply wanted to pass his final exam, had inadvertently revealed that Earth harbored the most capable species the galaxy had ever encountered. The question now wasn't whether humanity would join galactic civilization. It was whether galactic civilization was ready for humanity. As Marcus was escorted to special quarters while diplomatic protocols were initiated, one thought echoed through the minds of everyone who had witnessed his assessment. The galaxy would never be the same again.